BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello everybody, today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? On Mondays I talk to you guys about the Zodiac Killer, an unidentified serial killer who operated in California in 1968 and 69. Whatever happened before or after that is still part of the mystery. And you guys know the drill. You can hit the like button if you want, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment down below if you have something to say about the Zodiac Killer. For larger things, you can send them to me at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. And I am your host, Box Ned. Now, there is a regularly scheduled lineup for this channel, and it's been a little bit hectic over the last 3 months, so I thank everybody for their patience. But in addition to the shows that come out normally here on BBOR, Zodiac Monday, Ripper Wednesday, and Cooper Friday, the other two talking about Jack the Ripper and DB Cooper, there will be a bonus episode about the Zodiac Killer coming out on Thursday, and I will be discussing the book Zodiac Letters, Edward Wayne Edwards by Jason Hughes. And I invite you guys to tune in to that one on Thursday, and if you're listening to this in the future, feel free to check out the book discussion on Zodiac Letters, Edward Wayne Edwards here on BBOR, and always, give your feedback about any of these Zodiac Killer suspects and theories that have been mentioned on the channel. And dropping some other pieces of Zodiac Killer news for you, there is a live stream that was done on Planet X Filmworks by Ross Geraci, talking about all of the reasons why Arthur Lee Allen was not the Zodiac Killer. But the Zodiac case is so much bigger than just who is your suspect, because a lot of people simply want to know the truth, and they want to know, how do you get to the truth? We can compare suspect profiles all day long, and one of the ways to do this is to examine some of the evidence that the Zodiac Killer left behind. Because the Zodiac Killer wasn't only a serial killer, he also wrote letters, he designed ciphers, cryptograms, greeting cards, diagrams, he made phone calls, and the Zodiac really inserted a lot of things into this case that didn't need to be inserted, but he did that anyway. And one of them was the 1974 Exorcist letter, and this is one that has a palm print on it. Specifically, it's a side palm print, which is also called writer's palm. And this could actually be a strong piece of forensic evidence that was left behind that could lead to the Zodiac Killer's identity. But there is a complication, because giving a shout out once again to Vincent McConnell, who runs the channel New Cokes 2024, which you can hear and watch on YouTube, he did a video talking about how it is possible to insert fake palm prints, fake side palm prints, fake writer's palm onto letters. Perhaps you guys will remember some of the videos that Vincent made last year where he was talking about whether or not it was actually possible to put airplane cement on your fingertips the way the Zodiac claimed and disguise them. But he found out that it's possible even to leave these types of fake clues on paper when you're writing. So that just means that everything in the Zodiac Killer mystery is questionable. And it becomes very difficult to try and actually look at what could be real evidence, what could be misleading. But I invite you to check out the videos and live streams that were made by Ross and Vincent. And one more time, Planet X Filmworks and New Cokes 2024. Now we're into the year of 2025. And as stated, the Zodiac also wrote and created ciphers. And I have a very big thing that I would like to discuss with you guys here on the Zodiac Killer News Report. And this comes to us from Adam Ivester, who runs the channel Real Zodiac Killer Revealed. And this is relevant to his suspect, John Parr Cox, but it's also so far beyond that. I mean, he found the suspect, John Parr Cox, and everything that Adam has come up with is mostly his own set of original discoveries. But this focuses on a new video that he released in relation to the Zodiac Killer ciphers. Now, there are 4 confirmed ciphers that were released by the Zodiac Killer, or mailed in rather than released. There are 4 confirmed ciphers that were mailed in by the Zodiac Killer: the Z408, the Z340, the Z13, and the Z32. And the Z408 and the Z340 have been solved, but Adam has released a new video where he has proposed a solution to the Zodiac Killer's Z32 cipher, which is talking about the location of a bomb. And I'm going to play a set of video clips from his channel, RZ KR, Real Zodiac Killer revealed, and then we're going to have a response. And please, please, if you ever want to reference this, I encourage you to go over to Real Zodiac Killer revealed and look at the original, in fairness to Adam. But let's play the clip and let's talk about it.
But this cipher is the last one he did, basically, and I really never thought it was going to be solved, because even though it's on my wavelength of capability, because remember, the short ciphers, only 32 characters, according to the NSA, must be a simple cipher solution, simple substitution. That means letter for letter. It means we got to stick to C is C, and triangle, triangle, and OO. That's the only three confirmations we get here. Triangles, the two C's, and the OO. Now that's slim pickings, pal. I thought that this cipher was going to have a lot of weird symbols, a lot of numbers, decimal points, and that kind of thing. I was really shocked when I got my solution to find out how many letters of the alphabet are in this thing. And I will say right now that he did kind of cheat a little bit. Not really cheating, but he does a trick where, I'll show you here in just a second, where he takes the direction for S, meaning south, and N, meaning north. And obviously it's an S and an N, but because it's from the compass, it's not considered the traditional S. So he does some slick tricks on this one. But with Z13, to refresh your memory, it was the X that started it, that was like a signature line, that was the key to solving it for me. Okay. So I thought to myself, well, if he did something slick with Z13 at the beginning, I thought to myself, what if he does something slick at the beginning? Now this, I might mislead you into thinking that this happened in 5 minutes. Z13, I had his name already, John Parr Cox, John P. Cox, and the X is what gave the light bulb away that it's a signature line. Go to my other video for more information on that, but this took a long time to go through in my brain, but I'll give you the fast version because I know you want to find out what it says. I thought this concerns his so-called blast, which he made it sound like it's almost a party. Like he said one time, he said, "I hope you enjoy yourselves at my blast." A blast is another word for party. And I know John Parr Cox was from the social. His wife was a big socialite. And what do you do when you invite people to a party? You send them an RSVP. RSVP. I was very, very, very attracted to the idea that it started out with RSVP, because that would satisfy his need to be clever. And RSVP, by the way, has a dash and an M. We're going to go through this fast. So RSVP, remember, we only got 3 corresponding things that tell us that we're on the right track. That's the C, the triangle, and the O. C, triangle, and the O's. So let's go ahead and fill that in. And triangle's S. The C is R. O is M. Now, this didn't happen this fast. I'm just giving you the fast version of it. Okay, so RSVP-M. I know the word inches, there's a very strong possibility of the word inches in here, so I was attracted to the idea that this could be inches down here. INCHES. And if that's inches, if it's a spelled out number, the only spelled out number that ends in R is 4. So let's hit FO. Now, of course, this took a long time for me to get all this down, but I'm giving you the fast version. 4 inches, RSVPM. So RSVPM, he kept talking about it, it's his blast, my blast. B L A S. Now right here we got a problem because S is already used. S is already used for the triangles. So how could this be an S? I thought to myself, well, what if he does compass symbols a lot? Would it be cheating, quote unquote, for him to use S? It's a weather vane, like a compass symbol south. That's why I'm going to differentiate it there. And it's not cheating, quote unquote cheating. So I saw RSVP, my blast. I just felt instinctively that he was going to throw us the Zodiac symbol right here. And blast. So it kind of made RSVP -M, which is on RSVP, my blast. And then I thought, is that west? Or then I realized, no, that says O, and that could be N. Remember, N's already taken too, but if it's on a compass, it's still valid. So N's not taken on that. So that kind of makes up his little compass thing. See, right there, south, north, and he's not cheating. You see, because usually S would be taken and N would be taken, but because it represents south and north on a compass, he can get away with it. I looked that up. Ciphers have rules. RSVP, my blast. See, blast on ON. See, that's STON. RSVP, my blast on. It's got to be mount. Of course, a period here. D for Diablo. And if that's 4 inches, I already knew this has got to be 5. And radians, this is not cheating. That's not an R. That's just the radian symbol, those 3. So that's the solution. RSVP, my blast on Mount Diablo. 5 raid, but he's not cheating. He doesn't repeat himself because this is the radian symbol. 4 inches. And see, triangle, SS. R, see, RR, 4 RR, and MM. And that's the confirmation, and no repeating characters.
And one more time, that was from Adam Ivester on the channel Real Zodiac Killer Revealed. Now, this is one that I have to respond to as honestly as I can. And I would love to know what you guys think. Do you think that Adam has solved the Z32 Cipher? If I can be very frank, I think this is a new low for Adam Ivester. And I'm not saying that to be mean, because when I talk about a lot of different people's material and different theorists and their observations, and even just when I bring up Adam's videos in the past, he has made numerous ones, I get accused of being overly mean, overly critical, or that I'm being too dismissive, or that I'm not doing the most valuable service. And someone even once said that Adam is actually trying to solve the Zodiac Killer mystery. He's actually putting forward an honest effort to solve the case, and all you're doing is criticizing his work. But with this one, I have to express my genuine disagreements. Firstly, he stated that the small cipher has to have a simple substitution solution, and that's something that comes to us from the NSA. This relates to Adam's observations about the Z13 cipher, which has 13 symbols. The Z32, of course, has 32 symbols. But I don't know, if you ask me, 32 symbols is much larger than 13. That's more than twice the size. Could there not be another method that is being used outside of a simple substitution cipher where each character and symbol is represented by one single character or symbol? And I think that there's something that's so much more important than that. You heard him in that video clip. He stated that he believes that the Z32 is a simple substitution cipher. However, he didn't follow the rules of said simple substitution cipher. I mean, firstly, this whole thing about how S needs to stand for S, except that it's going to change once it represents the word south, that he's going to use that as a compass direction, therefore he can use the letter S twice, and it's not breaking the rules of his quote-unquote, well, the rules that he believes the Zodiac Killer was using. I mean, I guess one of the reasons why I get so frustrated about this is because Adam just seems to have this belief that I think is fundamentally wrong, where he states that a cipher has to have a set of rules. No, it doesn't. You can make any arrangement of letters, numbers, and symbols that you want and call it a cipher if it is your own creation. And just this expectation that other people are going to be playing by this set of rules that he seems to believe is true is just inappropriate and incorrect, because you don't have to. Other people don't have to. Other people don't have to meet your definition of a cipher. And I mean, I've shared some of that stuff before, and I have a standalone episode about his suspect called Zodiac Killer Suspect John Parr Cox, so I want to come back to this point in this video. Firstly, it has 32 symbols in the cipher, and at first, I thought that this was going to be something where I might actually be at least reasonably impressed, because when he said he was going to make the simple substitution, the Z32 has only 3 characters that repeat. That means there are 29 unique symbols, and 3 of them are used twice. The letter C, the O, and the triangle, which I'm going to call the delta sign. And I was like, all right, I'm going to watch this with an open mind. I'm going to hear him out. If he at least made a coherent message that could be placed with 29 unique symbols and only 3 repeat, all right, bring it on, even if you're going to be using language like RSVP. And I mean, the Zodiac did say things like, have my blast, so that's also a little bit of esoteric Zodiac language. I have to give him credit for that. But this whole thing just starts to fall apart once he begins to say that it's a simple substitution cipher, yet the word blast isn't actually spelled out B-L-A-S-T. It's spelled B-L-A, south, compass, N. And that this is just about how the word blast is containing one symbol, the Zodiac Killer symbol, which is used not only as a compass, but it also represents the letter T, it also represents the letter O, and it's just this combination of symbols that are put together. And to me, that doesn't meet the definition of the simple substitution cipher that he claims he is using. And I mean, this also happens again with the radian symbol at the end, where he's saying that the letter R is used in his cipher, but then he writes out the letters R-A-D and then says that's not cheating because R-A-D stands for radian. So there are at least 2 major points here where he has broken the rules that he claims that he is going to use to solve the cipher. And I think that his presentation would have been a little bit better if he had talked about how, okay, this is going to be, the zodiac sign is also going to represent a compass, if he had said that from the very beginning, and then you have the S and the N. But unless you're looking at the Earth in a very bizarre way, S is not normally on the right side, and N isn't normally on the left side. Or it's actually reversed in his S is on the left and N is on the right. Well, that's more like east and west. So those directions are even a little bit thrown off. And again, I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm genuinely pointing out things that I think are incoherent in his possible cipher solution. They aren't stretches. They aren't things where it's like, well, maybe this could possibly be true. No, I think he has his own set of rules that he is using, and he violated those rules to create the solution. Therefore, it does not work. And if you want to challenge me on any of that, you can put it in the comment section down below. If you think that there are some reasonable explanations about how this could be the correct solution to the Z32 cipher, you can put it in the comment section down below. I am very curious what you guys think about this particular solution. And I think that there is just one final observation that I made, and that's that a lot of people have talked about how the shapes of the Zodiac Killer symbols in the Z32 heavily resemble certain words from the English language, particularly California and North. And I thought when Adam was showing his set of ciphertext that he had written out with his own handwriting, to me, that just so clearly looked like the words California and North. And about 3 years ago, I attempted to solve the Z32 using that exact method, and in my solution, I noticed that it's almost as if the word Cali is divided, which clues you into California, and that also clues you into the divider. So you would have California and North. And again, the shapes of the letters to me look like the word vehicle. So California North by Office of Department of Motor Vehicles, or even Division of Motor Vehicles. And the word motor isn't in, but that's what we call it, a DMV. Office, so it would be California North by Office of Division of Vehicles, and then there's the PW Delta at the end, which I thought meant Petaluma West Division. And one way you can find this on the map is you take what the Zodiac Killer used, the radians, and Adam even talks about radians in his cipher solution. The Zodiac said to talk about radians, concerns radians and inches along the radians. And if you put the radian on top of Mount Diablo the way that Gareth Penn, author of Time 17, proposed, one arm of the radian goes to Blue Rock Springs Park, one arm goes to Presidio Heights where Paul Stein was murdered, and then you bisect it, then it starts going toward Petaluma, California. But the problem with my solution, by my own admission here, I'm giving you the problem, is you would then have to insert an additional radian at a certain point that would connect to the division of vehicles in Petaluma, which would then bring you to a school. So I ultimately had to admit that my solution was most likely incorrect. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to solve a cipher. I tried to do it. Maybe I didn't do the best job. I think one of the reasons why I get so fired up when Adam makes these cipher claims is he was banned from a Facebook group called the Zodiac Killer Library for insulting other people's work. And I mean, he was insulting other people's cipher work, saying that the cipher has to have rules and that I'm not even going to repeat the language that he used toward other people, but it was over this very specific issue about how with smaller ciphers, the NSA has said that it has to be a simple substitution cipher where one character represents one symbol, and it's going in a sequential order. There's no scrambled text and no scrambled solution. Yet, when he proposes his own solution to the Z32 cipher, he had to fudge that thing multiple times. I mean, talking about BLA, south, compass, north, and that's supposed to be the word blast. Yes, I do see what he's trying to do there, but that's just him manipulating the symbols and also using certain symbols for multiple meanings with language that is just jumbled together. And I don't even think he would dispute that. He might use different language, but the same idea is going to be expressed because that's exactly what he did in the video. All right, well, I'm going to move on from this one now. I would love to know what you guys think. You can put your responses in the comment section down below about this possible solution to the Z32 cipher. And right now, I would like to get to your supporter shoutouts because you can support this channel at buymeacoffee.com, buymeacoffee.com/blackboxnid88. And this allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show. And anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. And the first one comes to us from Batman66. Batman66, thank you so much for your regular and consistent support. And the next one comes to us from River Prawn Pottery. River Prawn Pottery is another regular and consistent supporter. And we also have one coming to us from Carl Karras, who is the author of the book The Zodiac, Murderers and History, Ciphers and Crimes. And 2 weeks ago, I did a book discussion on Carl's book, which I invite you to listen to, and you can also get that one on Amazon.com. And next we have Phil and Sammy Adventures on BuyMeACoffee.com. And it says, "Thanks for all the great content, Ned. Your Zodiac Monday is always a great way to kick off the week." Well, I really do appreciate that, Phil and Sammy. And there are going to be a lot of changes to Black Box Online Radio, and I'm really going to try and make the show bigger and be more consistent with releasing the episodes, because I've talked to you guys a lot about Cooper Friday and Ripper Wednesday, the other segments that I do here on Black Box Online Radio, but this show was always imagined as a daily program. That's how I started Black Box Online Radio, where it really was just a 7-day-a-week show that was made for 20 minutes. But the time is going to be changing in March, and I'm actually going to be devoting more time and effort to Black Box Online Radio, and there are going to be new things coming out, such as the channel membership. Firstly, there will be the return of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, the live streams that I do here on this show. And with the channel membership, you will get access to the Tuesday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, and there will also be a bonus episode about Jack the Ripper called the Double Event, to use some Whitechapel terminology. And to those of you who follow the D.B. Cooper case, there will be the Cooper Profile, which is going to be talking about D.B. Cooper, but done in a different way, where it's going to focus more on the psychological aspects of the case. So with the channel membership, you can just hit the join button here on YouTube, and you'll get access to bonus content starting in March, in about 3 weeks at the time of this recording. But if you're listening to this in the future, feel free to join. You'll get access to the bonus content, the Tuesday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning, the double event about Jack the Ripper, and the Cooper Profile. And there's still going to be lots of content going around, such as the Thursday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning will be made available to everyone, as well as the new weekend segment about the story of Jean-Benet Ramsey. So Black Box Online Radio is going to be expanding in a lot of directions, and I really could not do it without all of you wonderful supporters on BuyMeACoffee.com, and also with the super thanks here on YouTube. Thank you once again. And if we're going to be talking about channel memberships and ways to support YouTube content, there was the very famous Zodiac Killer channel, which was here on YouTube, that featured the Interview with the Expert series, as well as numerous other suspect profile videos, and even a dramatic reading of the letters. Not to mention the 3-part documentary series, Obsession into Darkness. There was a lot of content here on the Zodiac Killer channel, or on the Zodiac Killer channel that is now no longer up, because last year in the springtime, the channel was deleted rather unexpectedly by its owner. And the Zodiac Killer channel was running something where if people wanted to become what's called an executive producer of the Interview with the Expert series, they had the opportunity to pay $50 and get their names in the credits. It's quite similar to just being a patron or supporter, but they called it an executive producer. And somebody was posting about this on Facebook saying, "Hey, is the channel ever going to come back?" And my simple response was, I don't believe so. I mean, I've definitely reached out to the owner of the channel and was asking about what the future is going to hold and what happened to the old files that were used, and I did not get any response at all. And what that poster said was, the people who paid $50 to get executive producer credits should get a refund. And I think that that's an excellent idea, absolutely. I mean, if the channel was put up there and people were paying to support the channel and to support the efforts, then they should get a refund. And one of the things that I find to be so perplexing is that someone deleted the episodes because of internet security, or they believed that their accounts were compromised. And I was simply thinking that, hey, look, if that's the issue, I mean, you could just as easily give them to me and I could upload them here on Black Box Online Radio, especially the Interview with the Experts series, which is what is mostly requested. And I've said this before, that if they would have a problem with me monetizing the content and be like, hey, Ned, you were the host of that program, but you didn't actually do the organizing, you didn't do the editing, it wasn't even your original concept, then I would say that's absolutely fine with me. I would put them up without monetizing them. Or if they don't want them on Black Box Online Radio because they still think that that's an unfair approach, I was like, I can create some type of secondary backup Zodiac Killer channel and just upload the files myself, and no one is getting any money out of this. Just provide them, because we spent all of that time creating the content. Not to mention, as Richard Grinnell of Zodiac Cipher points out, that that had one of the interviews with the late Howard Davis, one of his final interviews, author of the Zodiac Manson connection, before he passed away. So I think that these people are entitled to a refund, but I have had no contact with the Zodiac Killer channel or any of the email accounts associated with it since the deletion. I just simply received a message saying that the channel is going to be deleted within 3 days, and that is the last I ever heard. I've asked for the files, and I was not given any type of response. But I just wanted to share that piece of Zodiac Killer news. Now, the Zodiac Killer mystery is a story that goes in a lot of very different directions. And last week on the channel, I was talking to you about a new person of interest named Richard Parker. And I'm just going to give you guys a preview for a future Zodiac Monday. I have to give a shout out to an individual named Andy, who contacted the show at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. And he has a Zodiac Killer suspect named Carl Richter, which I'm still exploring, and I will be discussing this individual on a future Zodiac Monday once I can truly evaluate the information. And people are coming up with new Zodiac Killer suspects all the time, and I, for one, think that that is a good thing, because this is an unsolved case, and it's not about simply revisiting the same suspects over and over again. And if we're going to talk about the reasons why we think a lot of the famous Zodiac Killer suspects or widely discussed Zodiac Killer suspects are not the killer or were not the killer, then why not look in different directions? And as somebody once said, that the only way to find a suspect who is flown under the radar is to look in different places, to look in those places under the radar. And one person who did that was Angela Fernandez Blevins, who wrote a new post about her Zodiac Killer suspect, James Michael Cline. He's one that I've discussed on the channel before, because Angela is the webmaster of ZodiacKillerX.com, and that is a place where you can read all about James Michael Cline. But she wrote out this post providing an introductory statement on her Zodiac Killer suspect, and this came out 5 days ago at the time of this recording. I met a Northwest Arkansas resident raised in Centerton, Arkansas, who I believe is the Zodiac. Coincidentally, my mother met him in 1976 at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville and fell in love. She married Mike Cline. And yes, his name is Mike Cline, but his full name is James Michael Cline. And her description of him is, Mike presents himself as a profoundly spiritual man with a secret pal, and I'm not talking about Paul Avery, but a younger evangelical. I've documented Mike Cline hanging out with a convicted sex offender named Josh Duggar, who was featured on reality television. They were in a prayer meeting at the house with children left alone in February of 2017, and I witnessed them doing something with a used car coming in from the property at War Eagle. Beware, coups don't care. We all know that this individual, Josh Duggar, is, well, let's just say someone who does something bad to children. And before we start, this is going to take a very, very drastic and sharp turn. Mike is a poisoner and a predator. The fact sheet is, especially when it comes to innocent children or anyone who is a target. I identified him as a poisoner. I am a stepdaughter who made an announcement to the world, and the FBI couldn't get steam. Mike put his wife, Susan, my mother, down an early grave using Roundup chemicals for the rose garden. Can you imagine how nauseated she was? And what Angela is talking about, again from reading ZodiacKillerX.com, is that she encountered this individual because he was her stepfather, and her mother passed away of cancer, and she believes that James Michael Cline intentionally poisoned her, and he learned how to poison her in a way that would cause the cancer while he was doing a master's certificate in gardening at Penn State University using the Penn State World Campus, the Penn State Online Campus. And then she began to investigate this, and she even confronted him about his education in gardening at Penn State, and he completely denied it. He completely denied doing the master's certificate in gardening, but she was able to find out through records that he was not telling the truth. Some of the reasons why she suspects James Michael Klein of being the Zodiac Killer is that it really matches up a lot with the timelines. Now, after he left the Navy, he was in the San Francisco Bay Area in December of 1968, and then he actually left and did not go back to Arkansas, but he went to Texas for a 6-month period. The Zodiac Killer committed his first murder on December 20th of 1968 with the Lake Herman Road murders. Then Mike Klein went back to Texas, and he was actually working with Southwestern Bell installing telephone booths there for roughly a 6-month period. This would explain the 7th-month gap in Zodiac activity between the Lake Herman Road murders and the Blue Rock Springs shooting. Bear in mind that the Zodiac Killer did not mail anything during these time frames. And then he moved back to the California Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area in California, that is, and he started working for Levi Strauss as a delivery driver. And this is also matching up completely with the Zodiac Killer's activities restarting with the Blue Rock Springs shooting as well as the Lake Berryessa stabbing and the Stein murder. Now, this is a point, though, where the story gets heavily challenged. And I had to go back and look at the first episode that I did where I was discussing James Michael Klein as a Zodiac Killer suspect. And I'm giving a shout out to longtime BBO War follower Stefan Nyberg, who wrote something interesting out in the comments section when he stated that this appears to be a very sad and tragic story, and it is an absolute sad and tragic event that Angela's mother passed away from cancer. But the entire reason that she began investigating him is because she believes that her mother was poisoned, and that does not appear to be an established fact. And it also is rather questionable whether or not someone has the capabilities to poison someone and simulate and recreate the symptoms of cancer, or someone has the ability to form some type of cancerous growth in someone based on gardening education. And she even says that he poisoned her with Roundup fertilizer, but it appears that this allegation is unconfirmed at this point. So the entire reason to investigate him for this set of murders in 1968 and 69 is almost just a giant question mark, or it's one where you would need a lot more supporting evidence, or it's going down a road where the initial suspicion is not a certifiable fact. And yes, I'm adding in some things, but Stefan did make the original statement, and I think that's the point that he was trying to make. Now, Mike Klein is still alive, James Michael Klein. He is still currently alive, and I'm not accusing him of anything directly. This is just something that has been shared online, and it seems like he might even be aware of ZodiacKillerX.com, this website that's talking about him being the Zodiac Killer. But in addition to reading this post, it appears that maybe, there was some type of illegal activity that he was caught up in during his lifetime. It seems like someone, such as his stepdaughter, might be able to demonstrate that he was associated with certain illegal acts, maybe involving this Josh Duggar guy. Again, I don't even necessarily know that, but the fact that she has these types of personal connections that have been established among this illegal operation that was going on. And I would definitely be more interested in hearing out those components of the story and knowing about that just in a different true crime direction that was outside of the Zodiac Killer story. Because, again, this goes into the category of, I suppose anything's possible. I suppose you have a reason to investigate your suspect, but that was Stefan's whole claim. Maybe your reason is something that you haven't confirmed yet, so maybe that's just not the best reason to investigate someone for being the Zodiac Killer. If you want to have a different true crime discussion about his other illegal activities, I would definitely hear you out. But, you can read more about Mike Klein, James Michael Klein, as a Zodiac Killer suspect on ZodiacKillerX.com. And I have to give a shout out once again to Batman66, who shared something with me on a different note. And this is one that's talking about the Zodiac Killer and the possible connections to the Old Norse word meaning kill. In 1974, a possible Zodiac Killer letter was mailed called the SLA letter, SLA standing for Symbionese Liberation Army. And this is one that talks about how SLA, pronounced slay, is an Old Norse word meaning kill. And there's an article that was written about this on brutenorse.com, then it's called Was the Zodiac Killer into Vikings? And I'm going to have a read of that for you guys here. Between the late 60s and early 1970s, the California Bay Area was haunted by one of the most cryptic serial killers of the 20th century. Though only 7 victims have been conclusively tied to the case, the Zodiac Killer orchestrated much of his own notoriety through a series of letters, frequently containing codes and ciphers, where he would send to various newspapers in and around San Francisco. This case is as cold as the grave, but whoever he was, he put a lot of thought into his image. And yes, I absolutely think that. The Zodiac Killer's material was very thoughtful and intricate. I don't think it was dumb. I just think it was unique, let's say that. Unlike most serial killers, the Zodiac was quite talkative. He chose his own nom de guerre. Yeah, very good. Nom de guerre. He chose that himself and signed his letters with a cross circle resembling a Celtic cross, or rather the wheel of the zodiac. The likeness of the crosshairs is that of a gun scope, and it is quite obvious and surely deliberate. Whoa, now wait a second. There could be multiple reasons why the Zodiac Killer chose that symbol. There could be a completely different reason why the Zodiac Killer chose that symbol, and I'll be talking about that a lot on the Thursday episode. This symbol served as his personal logogram throughout his letters, which often contain intertextual references and sometimes more famous passages of symbol ciphers, one of which has been successfully deciphered. It's difficult to make a non-speculative assessment based on the limited information that we have. If his strategy was to spawn a cacophony of speculations, his efforts were a clear, huge success. The references, as well as the playful, even creative contents of the letters, have led some to think that he might have been an artist, graphic designer, musician, or other such cultured person. Then again, if he's not the evil genius he's made out to be, he could simply be reaching far and wide for symbolism. He knew that this would give him a chime of mystery. And I have to throw in an interjection here, but that's one of the things that I just simply go with. I think that the Zodiac was intentionally confusing. I think that his material had personal meanings to him. I think it would be very difficult for other people to figure out, but that's just what he's trying to do. They have personal meanings, so other people couldn't understand it, therefore it's a chime of mystery. He wouldn't be the first person with a kind of sort of creative knack to be lauded as a genius, and despite passing this off as a deep puddle, guesswork about the Zodiac's identity has made him a modern-day Jack the Ripper, and the chaotic tangle of imaginative theories far outgrows the facts. And I do mostly agree with that, but I want to talk about the things with the Zodiac Killer and the connections to Vikings. The SLA letter, which contains the word slay or slaw, says, "Dear Mr. Editor, did you know that the initials SLA, Symbionese Liberation Army, spells out slay, an Old Norse word meaning kill?" And this is signed a friend, not signed Zodiac, but I think there's a very high chance that this was indeed from the Zodiac Killer. The above letter was received by the San Francisco Chronicle on February 14th of 1974. Perfect timing for this recording, and it is assumed to be one of the many letters that was penned by the Zodiac Killer. The Symbionese Liberation Army was a short-lived far-left terrorist organization that had a set of activities, and subsequent media and notoriety followed, one of them which was the kidnapping and recruitment of Patty Hearst, the daughter of a senator. This might have left the Zodiac with a feeling that the SLA was stealing his thunder, and it's possible that the SLA roused the Zodiac's jealousy. But then again, there is nothing but the letter to support the assumption. Though a minor detail in a complex narrative, my eyes remain glued to the phrase of this letter. I find it odd that the Zodiac should have any interest or knowledge about Old Norse, or presumably a non-academic American living in the 1970s. Whoa, now wait a second. How do we know that the Zodiac Killer was someone who wouldn't have had knowledge of Old Norse? How do we know the Zodiac Killer was a non-academic American? Can you tell me what the Zodiac Killer's occupation was? I know that some of you think you've identified the Zodiac Killer, but the Zodiac was a non-academic American. I know people who listen to this program who have suspects who are academic Americans, and it sounds like there is a bit of an assumption going on the part of this writer from BruteNorse.com. It could be an example of him reaching for obscurity in an attempt to seem creepy, but it seems like a far-fetched and unnecessary reference. Well, this article begins by talking about how the Zodiac Killer was not a dumb guy. He wasn't someone who didn't know what he was doing. This article starts out by talking about how, yes, the Zodiac Killer knew exactly what he was doing. The Zodiac Killer was somebody who put a lot of thought into his work. Does that mean he can't know something like an Old Norse word? I mean, really, like, how do you get to that conclusion? The one thing we do know is that the Zodiac seemed to mention things that interested him, such as movies, and he liked criminal cases that he followed. I'm so glad this article did bring that up. Switching gears, I was critical of it, now I'm praising it. I've talked about this for the longest time that I think the Zodiac closely followed true crime cases and he recreated them with his letters. Not so much the murders, maybe recreating the Phantom Killer murders from 1946, but I really think that he put a lot of true crime influences into his letters. It might be that he felt some sort of affinity toward a perceived Norse brutality so common in outward depictions of culture, especially in those days, though this is one of the only examples of him making an unveiled reference to Old Norse. It does exhibit a highly specific sort of know-how. Now, are you completely sure? No, let me stop you right there, brutenorse.com. If the Zodiac has only made one reference to Old Norse that we know of, or he's only quoting an Old Norse word one time, then he is trying to show off that he knows this word, but maybe he just knew one particular word. I mean, maybe he knew something. I mean, maybe he learned something. I really just don't think that is necessarily this is necessarily something that you can read too much into and say anything about the Zodiac Killer's intelligence. I mean, he had the ability to learn at a certain point, whether he had an IQ of 100 or 115 or 130. Maybe he encountered it from someone. Maybe he met someone who knew things about Old Norse. Maybe he was just someone who was an avid reader, which I believe the Zodiac Killer was. So I'm just sort of thinking about how someone's just kind of freaking out about this a little bit, and I'm not necessarily seeing the biggest reasons why. But this goes on to a different section called Constructing a Theory. While we don't get more definitive answers from the Zodiac's vocabulary, the postcard that he mailed called the Halloween card features a particular monogram or symbol which is speculated by some to be a runic ligature. If so, it could contain runes, and in any case you'll be hard-pressed to find a meaningful message by drawing on that piece of evidence alone. But since it's impossible to muddy the waters more than armchair detectives already have across half a century worth of digging, I'm going to entertain this idea a little further. And this does provide some examples of how the Zodiac could have been taking his symbol that is used on the Halloween cards, what's often referred to as the Flying V, from old runes that are used in, in Nordic ciphers, or just runic influences as well. So I think that that's a reasonable case, and that's not something that is completely exclusive to this article available at brutenorse.com talking about was the Zodiac Killer into Vikings. I mean, this one is definitely more into was the Zodiac Killer into Old Norse and runes. I think would be a better way of looking at it. But I mean, that's not something that is too controversial because he's talking about that in a letter. If that is indeed Zodiac, let's even scale back a little bit. What if the SLA letter is not genuine Zodiac activity? That could challenge everything. But you, whoever you are listening to this, you might know one word from some obscure language or something like that. And you might be able to incorporate that into a letter if you are just showing off. Or maybe he pulled it out of a dictionary. Maybe he went to the library and looked it up. Maybe he was just messing around. Although I don't find that to be the most likely option. I mean, if you're just asking me what I genuinely think, I think the Zodiac knew the word slay from Old Norse, and the SLA reminded him of that. End of discussion, full stop. And that's really why he included that, because he just knew something that was rather far out and esoteric. And I've said this many times in this episode, I don't think the Zodiac was dumb. So he was including things from his knowledge pool, and he's also just writing this for his own personal reasons. But what do you think about this? I would love to know everything that you guys would think about the Zodiac Killer's SLA letter. I would love to know what you think about this article from brutenorse.com. What do you think about the solution to the Z32 Cipher? What do you think about the suspect, James Michael Cline, who's available on ZodiacKillerX.com? And one more time, Please tune in for the bonus episode that will be coming out on Thursday. You can also check out the channel membership in the future and look at some episodes about D.B. Cooper and Jack the Ripper. That will be all for me now. Goodbye.